My perspective on sustainability is that it starts with people, and I'm fond of what's known as the 3 Ps: people, planet, profit. And as a business, we have to make a profit, but if that's all we do, I don't think that's particularly admirable.
Next up is a topic that is very close to our heart as a company, and it's about how we as businesses can be more responsible, more equitable, more sustainable, and utilize partnerships for good. At Impact.com, we are taking steps to reduce our carbon footprint. We're finding ways to just get more involved and support causes in the communities where our employees live. We have 1,000 employees in 16 offices around the world. Our largest office, if you guys aren't aware, is in Cape Town, South Africa. We continue to do that and invest in it. And why we're doing it is we've got a lot of customers that are actually demanding. They're writing it into contracts that we commit to, reducing our carbon footprint, for example. Our employees demand it. And as we continue to scale as a company, we realize and we believe that what we're building here is an incredibly powerful platform to impact change globally. And so now, before we dive into a discussion about all that on that topic, we're incredibly lucky because this panel is going to kick off with a great presentation. I'm going to introduce you to Julia Anderson. She's the VP of Brand Partnerships at Charity Water, and she's going to talk a little bit about their organization's work. And so for those who aren't familiar with Charity Water, and ironic maybe that it's raining, their mission is to basically bring clean and safe water to everyone in the world. So with that, let's welcome Julia to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Hope you all had a tasty lunch. That spread looked really yummy. Thank you, first off, to the Impact team for inviting me to be a part of today's programming and join this panel and also speak for a few minutes. As Dave mentioned, I'm the VP of Brand Partnerships at Charity Water, and we are on a mission to bring clean and safe drinking water to people in need around the world. I'm honored to get a chance to share a little bit more about our work and our mission, in the hopes that maybe it inspires some of you to think about how you're thinking about social impact, or even how you're just embedding a little bit more purpose in your day-to-day work. So the problem that we are trying to solve is that 771 million people live without access to clean water. And these are not just statistics, they're stories. And they're not just numbers, but they are women and children and people who lack access to one of life's most basic needs. Clean water, I think, is something that all of us take for granted. I mean, think about even just today, the number of times you've used water, whether it was brushing your teeth or taking a shower or taking a swig of your water bottle. Is something that we do 5, 10, 20 times a day without even thinking about it. And yet 1 in 10 people around the world live without it. At Charity Water, we like to say that clean water changes everything, and that's because we know that it has this ripple effect that can be a real catalyst for positive change. Clean water means health, so nearly 300,000 children under the age of 5 die every year from diarrheal diseases caused by drinking dirty water. It also means education. So if children and girls aren't walking for water, it means they have more time in their day to go to class and pursue their dreams of becoming doctors and teachers and nurses. It means economic opportunity. So the World Health Organization actually did a study that for every dollar invested in clean and safe drinking water, it will yield between $4 and $12 in economic returns. This is an amazing woman named Honorine, who we met in Madagascar a few years ago. And after her community received a water point, she was able to start a business and open up a restaurant in her village and sell snacks and donuts. It also means female empowerment. So just like that example with Honorine, it means that women have time back in their day to start businesses and take on leadership positions in their communities. I was in Uganda about 2 months ago, and one of the things that really stuck with me was hearing these stories about women and what the connection is between domestic violence and water. So women are walking 1-2 hours a day to collect water, waiting in long lines and coming home, and their husbands are angry because their bath is cold, their food isn't on the table, and that oftentimes leads to fighting. And there's obviously a lot to unpack there beyond just water, but it's been proven that when communities get access to clean water, domestic violence actually does decrease. This is one of my favorite stories. So this is a woman named Helen Apio, who our team met in northern Uganda many years ago. And after her village got clean water, she said, "I feel beautiful for the first time." And it was because for the first time in her life, she didn't have to choose between washing her children's school uniforms and taking a bath. She could do both. And so it's not just health, it's not just education, it's something as simple as restoring a woman's sense of dignity that clean water really has the power to change. She said, "Now I am beautiful." So the great news is that this is a solvable problem. For about $12,000, we can implement a water point that looks something like this. This is a drilled well with an Afrodev hand pump in Ethiopia, or something like this, which is a biosand filter in Cambodia. Or something like this, which is a rainwater harvesting system called a tanka in India. So our local partners roll in with their equipment and machinery, oftentimes on a road that was built by the local community. The drilling rig then drills down about 80 meters until it hits the water table. And then you see something like this. So a little bit more about us. We are on a mission, like I mentioned, to bring clean and safe drinking water to people in need around the world. And how we operate, how we do our work is a little bit different, and we've sort of chosen to take a different approach from day one. So firstly is our 100% model. So from the very beginning, we said we are going to send 100% of every public donation directly to the field to fund water projects. And the way that we're able to do that is because we have this amazing group of about 130 families and a few corporate partners that actually fund all of our operating costs. So all of the unglamorous things like staff salaries or trips to the field for our water programs team are funded by this amazing group of people. The second thing is proof. So we believe in the power of proof, and for every donor or partner that funds a water project, we'll actually go ahead and send them photos and GPS coordinates at the end of the project's completion. And thirdly, we wanted to build a beautiful brand. So we hired the very best designers from agencies and startups to build a brand that was rooted in hope and positivity and optimism instead of guilt. The way we take on the work is different as well. So we knew that in order for the work to be sustainable, it had to be led by locals. So we're working through local NGOs and multinational groups that have local teams on the ground that really understand the cultural context. We call ourselves solutions agnostic, meaning it's not a one-size-fits-all philosophy. It's really about understanding what the cultural context is, what the terrain looks like, and what the availability of water is in that specific area. And thirdly, sustainability. We know the work doesn't end once a water project is built. It's about empowering local leaders and utilizing innovative technology to make sure that water continues to flow for years to come. So in the last 16 years, and alongside over 1 million supporters, we've been able to raise over $750 million. And that has helped us to serve over 17 million people with clean and safe drinking water. We're currently active in 29 countries and have funded over 121,000 water projects. This is very much, we've made this progress in the last 16 years. This is very much due to an amazing global community of donors and supporters and corporate partners, a handful of which are featured up here. And these are amazing partners that are doing awesome things for clean water. They are running fundraising campaigns and producing capsule collections and activating at checkout, all to support our mission. And yet, while we've made this progress, and we've served 17 million people with clean water, it's still only 1/48 of the problem. And in looking at that number, we realize there's still a lot of work left to be done. We have a long road ahead, but we do believe that we can end the water crisis in our lifetime. And I think it's through the power of partnerships, which is why we're all here today, that we can hopefully see a world where everyone has clean water. So thank you. I'm going to end with a video that our creative team actually produced for our June fundraising campaign that launched yesterday. And it talks about our work through the lens of one of our partners in Sierra Leone, Goal, and I hope you enjoy it.
we're set, and we can start whenever we're ready.
My name is Thomas Jones. I hope you remember this story next time you take a drink of water. I am from Sierra Leone. I was born here, raised here, and educated here. I travel frequently for my job as a regional wash program manager at Go. When I visited the community called Beverhome, I saw that the old source of water was a swampy river. It was some of the worst water I have ever seen. The surface was brackish and boozy with flies. I did not want to know what was underneath. To be honest with you, I could not believe that people were drinking from it. I even asked the chief, "Are you sure? Is this your only source?" The chief knelt down and drank it in front of me. I will not forget that particular moment. It was my reaction that made the chief realize that the water was unsafe. And even with the knowledge that the water was making them sick, they had no option. The swampy river was the only water they could reach. Even if we could help Beverhome, they would have to return back to the river until a point was built. And that could take time. More on that in a moment. In Sierra Leone, there is a dramatic difference between a community that has clean water and a community that does not. Water is clear and water is contaminated. Laundry is simple and laundry is a tiring chore. Laughter comes easy, whilst worrying is a heavy burden. But most drastic is the difference in health. Let me introduce you to another community, one that got clean water 3 years ago. I was here when they drilled, and I've watched it change. Before, the people complained of rash and diarrhea. They spent precious time and money on medicine and clinic visits. Then, clean water come. Over the following days and weeks, health slowly improved. See, parents worry less, kids can study more. Everyone is energized and happy. Time has passed since the day I stood on the bank of the river with Beverhome Chief. Charity Water has since asked you to donate. Goal has worked tirelessly to bring clean water to the people across Sierra Leone. The community of Beverhome had to clear jungle, construct a road that's capable of withstanding the weight of a drilling rig. People have been waiting for the clean water they deserve. But today, the drilling rig arrived. There will be dancing, singing, and most of all, the relief. Soon, Beverhome will wield a future full of hope ahead. This is only one story. There are many more. So I ask you, the next time you take a drink of water, think of Beverhome, because today they are drinking clean water, and it is thanks to people like you and like me.
Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that with us, Julia. We're also joined today by David Bolotsky. He's the founder and CEO of Uncommon Goods. And so, David, I thought maybe you could give a quick intro to yourself and your company as well.
Sure. Thank you, and thanks for including us, and Julia, very impressive overview. So Uncommon Goods is an online retailer. We were founded back in 1999. Prior to that, I had actually been a researcher on Wall Street studying the future of retail, learned in the mid-90s that the internet was going to be a major sea change, and decided after 4 or 5 years of writing about it that I'd really much rather participate in it. And I looked for a category of merchandise that wasn't well served in stores. And so founded the idea based on supporting independent makers and designers who did not have distribution in traditional retail. And from the beginning, we've been very focused on being a values-based or sustainable business, though back in 1999, that was not terminology that was used. But we've been leather, feather, and fur-free from day one, have worked to pay a living wage from our early days. And since 2007, we've been what's called a founding B Corp as well.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So appreciate you both for being here today. I thought we could maybe have a bit of an open discussion about this topic. And I first kind of just wanted to start and set the stage with a bit of an observation about some of the evolution that it seems we've been on as a society. And if you, I think, throw it way back to the 1950s and 60s, kind of what's known as the golden age of consumerism. I don't know how many folks were around that time. It's kind of a time when products started to get a little cheaper, largely due to like manufacturing and marketing. So there was a lot of buying that happened there. And then you fast forward into the 80s, it was kind of known as the age of conspicuous consumerism. Think of the show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, MTV Cribs, where you were buying things to kind of show off how well you were doing, essentially. And I would argue that we are starting to kind of lean into an area of what I would call more responsible or purposeful consumerism. People are still buying a lot of things, but they're doing a lot more research, and they're trying to it was something that was shared in a panel earlier where it's not about buying a product anymore. It's about understanding the brand and kind of aligning your values with that brand's values. And so, it's kind of like, it's less about buying that product. It's like more about like how the choice that I'm making now in buying this product, how it's going to affect, in David's case, like the community around me or the world at large. And I think that's why you're seeing a number of companies like Charity Water maybe increase their funding, or more buying happening through stores or retailers like Uncommon Goods. These are companies that are using their influence, their connections to really make a difference. And I think if you take a look at some of the trends that are happening in the data, I know McKinsey did a research study recently, and they surveyed Gen Z. That's the kind of the latest generation with buying power. And the study found that 73% of Gen Z folks reported trying to purchase from companies that they consider ethical. And they say that 9 out of 10 believe that companies have a responsibility to address environmental and social issues. And so, from my perspective, I feel like we're paying to feel more. And I think maybe COVID, like this remote nature of society, has kind of maybe helped accelerate some of these feelings. But I'd like to maybe just start at a high level and get your thoughts on this progression, especially given your backgrounds and how you're seeing this play out in your current roles.
So I'm old enough, at least as a small child, to remember the 1960s. And it was a time of tremendous idealism, and it was a time where government was expected to really help create the rungs to help climb the economic opportunity ladder. And I would say in the 80s, both because the economy, 70s into 80s, economy got tougher, and it was a so-called me generation, I think there was somewhat increased cynicism and less reliance on the government to solve problems. And some of that, without getting too political, was that the solutions didn't always work. And so I think today we're seeing the impact of some of that. I mean, income inequality is at the highest level it's been in decades. And there are a lot of real challenges that we're facing. And with the government not being expected to step in as it once did, I think shoppers are looking at businesses to try to fill some of that void, and where they can direct their dollars, really try to influence. And if you think about brands, Patagonia doesn't put its label just behind the collar. That's a very visible label, and you're making a statement that you care about the environment if you're willing to pay $20, $30, $40 more for their fleece product than somebody else's. So I think that is something that consumers care about. I think businesses have always been doing good, and businesses have always been doing evil, But I think there's much more of a spotlight today on that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Julia, but just a quick comment on Patagonia. I'm very close to Patagonia because I live in a town called Ventura. It's where Patagonia started. So pretty much a lot of my friends work for Patagonia, and so I always get the 40% discount coupons.
You don't have to pay more.
But I was talking with our marketing team, this is years ago, that I saw on their Instagram handle, I don't know if you guys caught this, I don't know if they still have it there, but it says, "We're in business to save the planet." And I was thinking, wow, that is such a concise, powerful statement to tell the world that the more business you do with us, the more we're going to give back and save the planet. Now, granted, their purpose is, their products are outdoor related, so that very much relate to their brands. But Julie, I'd also just kind of be curious to kind of hear your perspective on some of that opening observation.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say we definitely see it as a common theme these days, especially among that younger demographic, Gen Z, which you referenced. It's informing a lot of the decisions that they're making. They care about the values of the companies that they're choosing to work for. They care about the values of the brands that they're buying products from. And they are going to be more loyal to brands that have some sort of sustainable mission attached to them. What you mentioned earlier resonated with me in that I just feel like also young people these days, but really everyone, is craving a sense of purpose and craving a deeper sense of connection. And I think some of that might have been triggered by the pandemic and then exacerbated by the fact that we're all working remotely from our homes and just wanting to kind of feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And I see it as a big opportunity for companies and brands to really come together and rally behind some sort of social mission to create that connection.
Yeah. And in this search, I do think terms like sustainability can get thrown around a bit. And just kind of curious as to how you view, there's a term called ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance. And just curious, from your perspective, what does that mean? And how would you kind of define that strategy that a lot of corporations are embracing today?
So my perspective on sustainability is that it starts with people. And I'm fond of what's known as the 3 Ps: people, planet, profit. And as a business, we have to make a profit, but if that's all we do, I don't think that's particularly admirable. And my perspective is it starts with people, so we've been very focused on paying a starting wage. We have our warehouse here in New York City. The lowest paid seasonal worker makes $20 an hour, which is not enough, but it's been moving higher over the years. And we got very involved in advocacy to raise the minimum wage and also got involved with paid family leave. So I would say, number 1, practice what you preach. And then number 2, as a business, you're often viewed as the enemy of the worker. And you can get the ear of elected officials and get involved in workplace issues as we have. So I think the people element is certainly a key piece. And then the planet piece, I mean, humans by our mere existence pretty much are detrimental to the planet. And the question is, how can we minimize that negative impact? And so in our business, people have been giving gifts since the beginning of time. Can we ensure that they're friendly to animals, friendly to the environment? So as I said at the outset, we don't sell any products containing leather, feather, fur. We eliminated plastic pretty much from our supply chain. So that's I'd say, how we focus on it.
And Julie, I know in your organization, when you identify a trend, you give it a term, ESG. I would imagine that a lot of companies might come to you to just check the box.
Yes.
Curious to what you're seeing along those lines and how you define it as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we were speaking earlier, you said something that I think is so true. There's just a surplus of terminology these days, whether it's ESG or CSR or sustainability or social impact. It all essentially kind of means the same thing. But really just ensuring a company has ethical and responsible business practices that hopefully are bettering the world in some capacity. And I think we are fortunate, outside of a number of other factors, that there is a lot of this momentum around ESG. It's very much a buzzword right now. And I think it's because companies are feeling the pressure from all angles now. It's not just consumers that are saying you have to have some sort of social mission. They're getting pressure from investors and consumers and their employees and partners to sort of say like, hey, you need to figure out a way that you're supporting the greater good. So I'd say we've benefited from that momentum.
I do think, even if some companies are checking the box, I do think that there is a trend afoot, right? There's, I think I mentioned earlier that maybe COVID kind of accelerated some of the stuff, but there is globalization happening. There's climate change being discussed. I think there's more awareness for universal human rights. A lot of that just dominates the headlines. I think the internet, these social platforms are helping to, kind of distribute that information, raise awareness, and I think people are starting to lean in more and care. But I'm just curious, in your work, how did you guys personally kind of get into your line of work? How did you find that purpose?
So for me, as corny as it sounds, I'd say I found my purpose from my parents. They raised me not to pray at the altar of the almighty dollar, but really to try to have a positive impact in whatever I did. And my father worked for the United Nations. My mother was a social worker with the elderly, and they didn't think I'd end up on Wall Street, which is what I did for 14 years doing research. But even when I was doing that, I was trying to do it in an ethical way. And so for me, what we do from a sustainability perspective is not about marketing, it's not about recruiting, it's about trying to, and I own the majority of the company, and so it makes it a lot easier. I mean, we do have some outside investors, but ultimately we have to answer to ourselves rather than to them. And having a positive impact is just really central to our existence as a business.
So a bit of an OG, like basically naturally, organically operating that way before there was a label, an ESG sort of label.
Yes, but as we talked about before, I think ESG has existed from the beginning of time, just with a different term.
Differently.
Right. And I think, to your point, Julia, we are more mobile as people than we've ever been, more remote than we've ever been, and that sense of community. And again, you can get very philosophical about the role of religion in society and how that's less central today than it once was, but I feel like the social fabric is not what it once was, and people are looking to businesses to help create meaning or support their values.
How about you, Julia? What was your personal journey to get into Charity Water, for example?
I mean, I hate to go down that corny road again, but for me, it was also my parents. My mom, when I was growing up, was a lobbyist on the Hill advocating for progressive legislation. And then my older brother was born, and he was born with cerebral palsy. And so she kind of did a 180 and repivoted her life to start a nonprofit in Philadelphia, which is where I was raised, focused on providing tools and resources for people who have disabilities so that they can go on and live more independent lives. And I saw the passion and dedication and heart that she put into that, and it always really stayed with me. My dad was a professor teaching environmental law, and that was also something that he was personally very passionate about. So I kind of had that ingrained in me from day one. I went on to work at an ad agency and then eventually moved over to working in media and publishing. And eventually just kind of started to feel a little empty and lost. And through a series of coincidences, ended up meeting Scott Harrison, the founder of Charity Water, and learned more about his story and the mission of the organization, and was just blown away.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was a place where I could kind of marry these skills and expertise that I had learned around partnerships, but in a totally different ecosystem. So it's been just very rewarding.
I'll just throw it out. If you haven't seen Charity Water's video, Scott, the founder, it's an incredibly inspiring video that he has on the Charity Water website. I think he was speaking at the HubSpot Inbound conference. You'll be incredibly inspired. But I want to continue, Julia, on, especially in your role, VP of Brand Partnerships. We're talking a little bit about our brands checking the box. I think before you had used a term called greenwashing. I think. Just kind of curious, how do you go about finding the right partners to kind of, just amplify your mission in more of an authentic manner, since that's the term of the day, I guess?
Yeah, authenticity is really key. And for us, it's quite easy. You'd be surprised to figure out who is partnering with us for the right reasons, who's there to check the box and who really cares about the mission, who really wants to make a lasting impact. And I'd say we're fortunate in the sense that we do have brands that come to us because they've heard our founders speak on a podcast or in person, or maybe they have a friend who is running a birthday campaign. But then we're also doing a lot of proactive outreach. We're reaching out to brands that are prioritizing wash, prioritizing water. And then a lot of it is relationship building, partnerships, listening, learning together. And I would say that the fun thing is that oftentimes for these brands, water isn't their primary focus. It's women or children or health. And we're able to kind of, through storytelling, connect the dots because we know that all those things are so inextricably linked. So one example that comes to mind is Aveda. They're one of our biggest global partners. And that partnership started out through a simple phone call. There was someone on their sustainability team that had heard about Charity Water, was really passionate about our mission, and said, hey, let's jump on a call and see if we can work together. And we learned more about their focus. They were really focused on climate and the earth and being a green brand. And we decided, okay, let's figure out a way to celebrate Earth Month with a focus on water. And they're amazing. They, through a product every year, donate $10 to Charity Water. They also, on Earth Day every year, all of their sales online support Charity Water, and then all of their salons across the world actually fundraise for clean water. So they've been a partner of ours for just a few years, and in that time have raised over $5 million for clean water. So really, really amazing.
Wow, that's incredible. Dave, how about at Uncommon Goods? Do you kind of incorporate that into other businesses or other partners that you have that might refer you customers, or just other alliances that you might have? Is it important to you that they kind of share your values? I know your focus is on kind of local communities, for example.
Sure. So we have a program called Better to Give, which is back in 2000, 2001, one of the early one-for-one programs. So we donate $1 to a nonprofit for every customer that chooses one at checkout. And so we work with American Forests, which, since we do print paper catalogs on Forest Stewardship Council certified paper and recycled paper, but nonetheless, we are contributing to chopping down trees to an extent. They plant a tree for every $1 donated. We work with a nonprofit called the International Rescue Committee, which helps folks overseas in crisis, and then also just started working this year with an organization called Nest, and they have a program that helps less advantaged makers connect with companies like ours. So that's a program where we've donated about $3 million over the years, and so that's important partnership. And then other partners, we're certainly looking for people to be values aligned. If they're not completely values aligned, I encourage a very pragmatic approach, which is if you're here, we want you to be there. Let's see if we can work, crawl, walk, run, get you to move a little.
Yeah. How much of that just curious, how much of that do you think is driven by what your customers expect you to do because they know what Uncommon Good stands for, versus you personally and what you believe in, and you're making it a requirement?
I'd say it's hard to unscramble that scrambled egg because, first of all, it's not me, it's our team, okay? I have that much influence now. But the people who choose to come to work at Uncommon Goods and choose to stay at Uncommon Goods typically are values aligned. So I think our team has a much bigger impact than I do, and I think, I would say it's more our team than our customer, but I think it's a positive feedback loop.
Excellent. Okay. Maybe a follow-up to that for both of you. Just curious, from your outreach to partners, customers, investors, interested in both success and roadblocks that you're seeing in expanding, your own ESG strategy, whether it's your own personal strategy or it's a full corporate commitment.
So back in 2015, the UN developed the Sustainable Development Goals that were focused around a myriad of issues ranging from climate to water to poverty to agriculture, and they set these ambitious goals with 2030 as the target end date. And we are just nowhere near reaching those goals. So I think COVID contributed to the slowdown, but we're seeing a lot of positive momentum through that realization that there's so much work left to be done and that we have a lot of catch-up work to do. I would say, kind of to the similar note, what I mentioned earlier, that we have only addressed 1/47th of the global water crisis problem, and yet we are one of the biggest water NGOs in the world. I mean, that's kind of a staggering realization. So while it's amazing that we have donors and supporters that are giving $10,000 or $20,000, we're realizing we have to kind of swing for the fences if we're going to make a big dent. So we're putting our heads together and dreaming up, what would it take, what would it look like for us to bring 1 million people clean water? So I think it's some of that creative thinking, creative strategy, and realizing that there might be people, there might be companies out there that are compelled by that idea and are willing to go on that journey with us.
So, you're giving yourself a hard time for not accomplishing it, but there's a lot of businesses that don't even know what the heck you're talking about. Like, they haven't even gotten started on their journey. And so along those lines, Dave, I kind of want to go back to something that you said earlier, which I thought was very interesting, the 3 Ps. What was it again?
People, planet,
and profit. And maybe that's a framework and some ideas on how you could inspire businesses that have yet to fully kind of understand the opportunity here and how to get started, because it does seem daunting. Like, the level of accomplishments that something like Charity Water has, I have to imagine it took years and a huge commitment. But companies need to start somewhere. What advice would you give them, even if it's a small step?
So I would say, the smallest step, when I was working on Wall Street and didn't think I was making the world a better place through my job, I was encouraged to volunteer by my company, and I found that to be incredibly meaningful. And you don't need to be encouraged. I mean, I was doing it from 7 to 11 at night, one night a week. But as it relates to volunteering or anything that you do in that kind of way, I would encourage you to be selfish about it. And what I mean is, do something that you're going to feel good about doing, and ideally something that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to feel a sense of satisfaction, because that means you're going to do it for a while, and it's not just you're going to parachute in in a performative act and then leave. It's something that can really be meaningful. And then within your business, I am a big believer in the adage, crawl, walk, run. Maybe do something in your corner of the world. If you're working in merchandising or you're working in marketing, find a partner, find a vendor that you believe in, give them a little extra edge, give them a little extra love, and see how you can help build that positivity. And get the ear of senior people and try to persuade them as well. But don't view yourself as having to go from 1 to 100. Go from 1 to 2 to 3.
And how about you, Julia? Any tips on how businesses can get started, especially if they haven't yet?
Yeah, I think for me it comes back to the ideas of authenticity and then actually taking action. So authenticity being, think about your values as a business and an organization. I mean, obviously, water is the soapbox that I stand on, but it might not be yours. Maybe it's agriculture or animals or the earth. Think about what is true to the DNA of your brand and kind of move in that direction. Also, talk to your people. Talk to your employees about what are the issues that they care about, what resonates with them, because internal buy-in will be critical in order to move some sort of platform forward. And then I would say take action, figure out those small ways that you can make a difference. And ideally, it's also not a one and done thing. Kind of pepper those throughout the year. Think about small things that you can do over time. And then I would say make some sort of financial contribution if you can. And that sounds obvious, but oftentimes, going back to greenwashing, these brands are making these pledges, but not really putting any skin in the game. So I would say that's a critical part of it as well.
Yeah, those are great tips. I know Dave and Julie, I hope you don't mind me suggesting this, but they're very passionate about their businesses and ways in which businesses can get more involved. And so feel free to reach out to them directly, because they would love to share more of their experience with you. So I wanted to kind of close this out. I see we got a minute left here, with ending with a simple but probably the hardest question, and that is, why does all this matter? Like, why kind of pursue this endeavor, and why now? What would you say to that?
In 15 seconds or less. What's the meaning of life?
Yes.
I mean, to me, that's kind of what it comes down to. Why are we put on this earth? And my philosophy is the most satisfying thing to me and the most important thing that I can do is help others. And I think everybody in this room is in that, if not the 1%, in the 3 or 5% most fortunate people. And so, yes, it starts with our family and our friends, but we've got a responsibility to the broader community. I think it's the meaning of life, what life is all about.
How about you, Julia?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet, but I think that all of us are searching for our purpose, and hopefully that purpose is somehow connected to bettering the world in some way. And I would say if you don't know how to find your purpose or where to start, just, again, we keep talking about values, but go back to your values. What are your guiding principles? Individually, personally, and as a business, I would say start there and the rest will follow.
And again, just to underscore the Scott's video from Charity Water, a lot of that video, what I took from it was him finding his purpose and how he translated that into creating Charity Water. Because I think at the end of the day, we all want our time on earth to mean something. But in my opening comments, another motivator, if that's not enough for you, I can tell you that your customers demand it, whether they're a direct B2C brand or B2B brand, your employees demand it. And I think at some point in your life, you're going to kind of come around to that, right? And so there is a way to engage. So anyway, just want to thank Dave and Julia for joining us today. Great discussion, and I hope you found some inspiration in it. Thank you.